Everybody. I thought I'd share with you today a technique with using alcohol inks. These are inks that you can buy at any art and craft store, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Joann's. They're little bottles of alcohol ink with different colors in them, and with them you can do things like this. Okay. These are great for backgrounds, or if you wanted to do any fancy type of canvas and things like that. There's a lot of pour art paint where they're taking paints nowadays and pouring them onto canvases, and they're creating all these fancy backgrounds and cells. This is similar to that, except for that we're using a different kind. We're not using an actual paint, we're using alcohol ink. So for this, you're going to need a few things. First of all, you're going to need a really ventilated room. So I have my office window open here. I did have the fan going, but I didn't want it to be too loud. So I have my office window open here so that I won't, get too dizzy from the fumes of the alcohol. My son walked in a few minutes ago and said, "Ew, what's that smell in here?" So it's the alcohol ink. So we're going to go ahead and show you how to do something like this today. It doesn't necessarily have to be these colors. So when you're doing alcohol ink, you need a special kind of paper. You can't use just regular cardstock paper like you use for cards, okay? You need a surface that's non-porous and glossy. That helps them spread around the paper a lot easier than if you were to do it on regular paper. This here is a piece of that photo paper that I used a couple techniques ago with the Distress Oxide inks. This can be used too. It doesn't work as great. It doesn't tend to blend as much. But it does okay. The next thing that they have here is this paper. This one is by Tim Holtz, Ranger ink. It's an alcohol ink cardstock. And I think I got this at Way Up Art and Frame for $5.99. And it's similar to the glossy sheets, except for that it's made for alcohol inks. It's sort of like a gloss cardstock, and it's really good to use for that. This third one over here, and the one that I prefer the most, is Yupo paper. And Yupo paper is sort of like a plasticky kind of non-porous paper. And you can buy those also from Tim Holtz or at any arts and crafts store. They're kind of pricey, but they are well worth it. This one I got, let's see, how many sheets? 10 sheets for $9.99, but of course I used my 40% coupon when I was at Hobby Lobby. But this is the one I prefer. And they come in big sheets at the art store, but they do cost more. Or they can come in smaller sheets, or you can cut these down as well. So this is Yupo paper. And this is the one that I prefer to use because it tends to blend better than the other two do. In a pinch, I would easily use this this glossy cardstock from Tim Holtz, but I prefer the Yupo paper more. This last resort, the one that I did with the glossy photo paper, it doesn't have the same reactions as the Yupo does, as you can see. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to warn you, this is a very, very messy. I already have a few ink spots on my hands, but it's very messy. But I personally like playing with all the colors and inks, and I don't mind getting it all over my hands. If you want, you can wear gloves. Things that you might need are some of this alcohol blending solution. It's from Tim Holtz Ranger ink. It is a solution of several different things. It's not just your regular rubbing alcohol. You can use this, but you get a better mix with the blending solution. So we're going to use both today. In this little stopper, I have some of this regular 91% isopropyl alcohol, and we're going to use this blending solution here as well. Now, this comes in a small bottle. Of course, you can buy them in bigger bottles, but it will cost more. I don't remember how much I paid for this one. But you'll need a bottle of blending solution, and I'm almost out, so I'm going to have to make an emergency run to Michael's later. You can get some of the alcohol inks. There's different brands. Tim Holtz from Ranger has a brand. Brea Reese has a brand of alcohol inks. And my favorites are the Adirondack by Tim Holtz Ranger inks. They come in lots of different colors, and they're very pretty. So I have several of those here. I've gone ahead and taken off all the caps because when I do this, alcohol tends to dry a little faster. So you really need to move a little quicker on these. So let me go ahead and we're going to start with a piece of Yupo paper. Oh, I also recommend maybe a straw, any straw, or if you have little pipettes, that also helps with distributing like the regular isopropyl alcohol on your paper, if you decide you want to do that. Then you might want to have a place that you don't mind getting ink. This is why my mat's all inked up, because I use these alcohol inks, and they do rub off, and they don't rub off onto my paper when I'm making cards, but they just look awful. So this is the mat that's always on my desk. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a piece of this Yupo paper, and when you look at it, the one side is glossy, the other side is glossy but not as much as the top. So you want to use the glossiest side first. Basically, you're going to go ahead and just pick a few colors and start pouring. I like to call this making salad dressing because sometimes I get to where I'm shaking things left and right, and I'm putting in some of the blending solution, and I'm adding in, I feel like I'm making a vinaigrette for a salad. So I sometimes like to put fun music on and listen to the fun peppy music while I'm doing this. But whatever you do, like I said, have a well-ventilated room. So let's go ahead and get started, okay? So what you're doing is you're just going to pick any colors you want. These are just regular colors. These here are called mixatives, and this is a silver and a gold. And these are an alcohol ink, but they have a little bit more silver, and they have a little bit more metallic look to them. And so they will add the nice metallic look to them, and they don't blend as much as the alcohol inks do. But if you get a straw and start blowing on them, you will get that. So if you happen to see my head in this picture while we're doing it, it's me using the straw. I tried to find a really long straw so I wouldn't get my head in the picture. But let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick some random colors. One of my favorites is the purple. And you just start sprinkling it on. Like I said, it looks like you're making salad. I also highly recommend having around some baby wipes, because things like that just happen. And a lot of paper towels. So when this stuff goes on, it starts to spread out, as you can see. Okay, and I didn't even blow on that with a straw or anything. I just sort of made its own little thing. See the little cells here that are happening? The ink spreads out. If I were to take this alcohol blending solution and pour it on, look what happens now. The alcohol that's in that is pushing things away and creating all these little cells. If you like this, you can use your heat gun and blow over it, and it will dry the way you want it to dry. Okay, but I like to just sort of twist the paper, use my straw to move things around the way I want. Now let's go ahead and put in some of this pretty pink. This one is Wild Plum. Let's see how that goes with this. Again, and as I just sort of pour it on how I want it, sort of blend it around, because that solution that we put on, the blending solution, is still a little wet on there. So it's going to cause it to sort of shift around. Let's add a little bit more blending solution to get these to really mix. Okay. I'm going to twist the paper around. I'm going to go ahead and blow on it. Now over here it's starting to get a little dry. So you could take a little bit of this blending solution, pop it on there, and look, it's starting to spread again, right? So you can go ahead and tip it and tilt it. And basically, you're just going to keep doing this until it looks the way you want it to look. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in some random colors. You might get mud in some areas if you mix certain colors, but it's just fun to experiment. Let's put in a little bit of this green. Ooh, that's a little bit green. Now we'll do the blending solution again. Okay, I was looking a little too Barbie there for me with the pink and the purple. So now over here, you can see it's starting to turn to a brown. Having a paper towel handy or a wipe nearby is good, because you can sort of drop off any of it that you want if it gets too saturated. Like I put on too much of the solution. So I'm going to go ahead and blow this. Now let's take some of these mixatives. These, when you drop them on, sort of just stay in place unless you put a little bit of the alcohol solution on it. So let's put in some silver. I think silver will look better with these colors. So let's do some silver. These you sort of have to squeeze. They're a little bit harder coming out. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take some of that blending solution and pour it on randomly. We're going to twist our paper around. We'll use our straw to blow. So you can see how it spreads when you add more of the blending solution onto the mixatives. And then let's go ahead and take the heat gun and I'll show you what happens when it gets dry. So let me go ahead and put this on for a minute. Sort of come in from all the sides and push it around and see how this is coming up over here. Now, because this is a plastic paper, if it gets really, really hot, sometimes it'll sort of curl and everything like that, but you don't need to worry about that because in the end, it'll all work out just fine. Okay, so it's mostly dry. Like I said, because you're using alcohol, alcohol when it's in the air tends to dry a little faster. So see if I'm blowing with my straw, I'm not getting much movement. But look at the pretty cells that are showing up over here because of the alcohol blending solution. Now let's take a little bit of this rubbing alcohol, the isopropyl, the 91%, and I have it here in a little squeeze dropper. And let's just drop it and see what happens to it. Okay. It doesn't do the same thing that the blending solution does. It sort of, you know, spreads out and everything and moves around, but it doesn't really do as much as the blending solution itself does. So let's put the blending solution down and you can see a little bit of difference between the two. Okay, you get a little bit more cells over here, right? The isopropyl alcohol just sort of splotched and went out, but it didn't make the fun little circles like the blending solution did. So look at these beautiful colors and these beautiful mixtures that we're getting over here. Let's go ahead and tilt it and sort of mix some of this purple in with these other areas. And once you get it the way you want it and you like it, you can go ahead like I just did with the heat gun and sort of set it. That's not going to mean that it's going to be permanent because you can come back in with the alcohol blending solution and do some more. Like a few seconds ago when I when I dried that, it was permanent. It felt like I wasn't going to be able to do any more. But once I got that blending solution on there, started adding more alcohol colors, it still worked just fine. So let's see. What would happen if I put in a little bit of this blue real quick here? The nice thing about this too is you're not going to get the same thing twice. It's very hard to replicate one design from another. I've tried a few times and it's a lot harder than you think to try because it's just going to react differently every single time. Look at my fingers, they're all getting all stained up. Again, I don't mind, I like that. It's like a badge of honor for me. So we're going to go ahead and just keep twisting it. Seeing how the mixative, because of the blending solution, is now starting to move around a lot more. And the fumes in here, boy, they smell. Let's go ahead and see if we can add. Okay, is it okay to mix your silver and gold? Let's see how it looks with some gold. Add it in there. And let's get some of that blending solution. Let's start blowing. Let me turn it and blow it the other way. There you go. All right, I'm loving all the color on there. My friend pointed out to me the other day that I'm just a person who likes a lot of color. And that's true. I have like 10 fingernails, but I have 50 million bottles of nail polish. And that's because I like all the different colors. All right, I kind of like it the way it is there. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'm going to go ahead and put the heat gun on it because I kind of like it. The heat gun will still push it around a little bit, but I like the way the silver is sort of like diffusing out here, right here, and little tiny dots of it and specks of it. So let me go ahead and blow dry this. You see how the heat gun was sort of pushing it and making little bubbles there. Little tiny cells. Okay, so it's not completely dry at this point. I have quite a bit of stuff on there. But see, as I'm twisting it now, it's not really moving around. So once I get this completely dry, what can I do with this? I mean, now that I've made it, now what? These are great if you want to take and make on a card background. You just put it down on your card base and you can stamp over this. I highly suggest using the VersaFine Black Onyx ink and maybe heat embossing over the top of it. It comes out looking really pretty with some nice black ink. You could also use StazOn ink because this is a non-porous surface. Sometimes when you're stamping, it can get a little slick and things can move around when you're stamping with your stamps. So using StazOn ink, when you put it down, it's alcohol based as well. And when you put it down, it tends to stick and it doesn't slide around like the other inks would. But let me just grab a stamp here and we'll stamp something on it. Let me see if I can find that stamp real quick. Hang on. Just admire my art right there. Let's see. I think one time I had made a card using this stamp set here. And I think I had used this Always cling stamp. I ended up stamping it down. So let me just show you. I'll do a test run here. Let me wipe up the surfaces a little bit so I don't get my card base and everything. Okay, to clean this up off the mat, I just take some of the alcohol distress or the alcohol blending solution or some isopropyl alcohol and splat it on there, and it easily cleans up off your mat. These mats are really wonderful for working them. Okay, so let me go ahead then, and I'll grab a big stamp block because this is a bigger stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and put this stamp, cling stamp on here. I'm going to go and grab my VersaFine Black Onyx ink. Okay. Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and take it and I'm going to stamp it all up with the ink. I guess what I need to do first is make sure this is absolutely dry. Let me do one more check. Okay. Feeling pretty confident that it's dry. It won't be a problem if it's not. But okay. So once I've got everything stamped up, I'm going to go ahead and just stamp it down onto the paper. And sort of press it in. Okay, pull it up, and it's stamped on there now. So, well, like when we do regular stamping, we go ahead and we put on some embossing. So I'm going to get my clear embossing powder, and somewhere I have a little tiny spoon that I got, Baskin Robbins, I think. I'm going to take my clear embossing powder and I'm going to put it over the stamping. Now, because the ink may not be completely dry, the alcohol ink, some of this may stick to the alcohol ink, but that's not a problem. It's clear. It won't be that big a deal. Basically wanting to try and get that black stamped image to really pop. Okay. So I go ahead and put it on. You can see some of it got over here. Obviously this area wasn't too dry. So I'll go ahead and sort of tap it off from the back. It's still on there. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and take a paper towel and sort of wipe that area off. But again, like I said, it's not going to be a problem. Then we're going to go ahead and take our heat gun. And we're going to melt that embossing powder. So you see how I'm sort of, when I heat it, it's starting to warp up over here a little bit? That's not a problem. You can just bend it back and things like that. And when you use your adhesive on the back, it won't really matter anyway. It will tape it down. You can also sort of pull your heat gun off for a second and do it again. Okay, so once the embossing is done, now you have a raised stamped image that says always. And one thing that I also like to do is I like to get these, what is it? Here they are. These markers that you can buy, they're paint markers, and I like the silver and gold ones because then what you can do is get this going and you could go into your raised stamp area and color it in with the silver. See how we're doing that? It just sort of goes up over it and adds a little bit of color to it. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it. Now, another thing you can do on this, when you're using alcohol ink, while it's still a bit tacky, like when I touch this now, it's a little bit tacky still. What you can do is you can take gold leafing and you can put gold leafing onto it. Let me see if I can grab my gold leafing real quick. So I have some of this leaf metal gilding flakes, and you can easily, while it's still tacky, let me just grab a tiny piece of it here. You can take some of those gilding flakes and you can put it on areas that are tacky, and then take your brush and sort of brush it off, and whatever's left will be gilded on because that area was tacky and the gold leafing is now sticking to it. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with that. Now the alcohol inks are great because you can do them on any surface. You can take these and tint glass, for instance. Like if you had a cute little jar, you can take this and you can put it on that glass and sort of tint the glass. Because the glass is a non-porous surface. So these are really fun. Like I said, I think you should probably get them and try them out in a well-ventilated room and see what you can do with them. They're just fun to just sit here and play with. So I hope you give it a shot, and I hope you like this video. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below or send me a message. Thanks, bye.